Today we have a new episode with why 95% of businesses lose customers and staff they could have kept and how to fix it. We have Gabriela Enriquez, CEO of HRBD, right, Inc.?
BP Inc. Yeah.
Exactly. And we have our partner in crime, Jason Dizamba.
Hey, guys.
So we're diving deep into churn prevention, staff empowerment, and win back campaigns. We were just talking about the importance of having the right marketing in place, and also, and that this is why Gabriela comes in. This is why the staff and HR is so important, because a good staff will actually, and a good marketing will provide better results. And to start this conversation, we know that there are some hidden costs of neglecting retention. This means that some people just try to acquire new customers and they are not really paying attention to the real customers and returning customers. I know that, Jason, you have worked with retention marketing lately. Do you have any insights that you would like to share on this point?
Yeah, well, I think it's important too, since we're talking about the function of HR in a business capacity. It's kind of the same too, because if you're marketing to get a client, you're using different means to do that, and a lot of the time it's spent focusing on getting that client first, and we spent all of the effort getting the client. The same way that HR, they spent a lot of time talent recruiting and getting the people in the door. And I think a lot needs to be done, a lot of work needs to be done in keeping the customers, keeping the employees that are at organizations happy, encourage them, develop them, and put that as a priority versus the front end. And that's what I think. I'd be really curious to see how we could pick that apart with Gabby. She's got diverse HR experience, so she's seen all of these things happen. And it's kind of like the same effort, but in marketing and then in existing organizations. So I think that's a great place to start the conversation.
Yes, as part of it, I have a light here bothering me. As part of the retention marketing and the strategies that we've been putting in place, we work a lot with loyalty programs. And this is when we actually create different insights and actually getting people back to your product or to your business. So if we talk about what impact does a staff has, or what involvement do we expect from the team that actually manage the business, do you have any insights on the HR part of how the staff should act with new customers or try to retain those customers? I'm curious about that, Gabriela.
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's very important for an HR person that is dedicated to the organization, understands operations. That is first and foremost, because they really go hand in hand, and they need to understand the business itself, and also obviously connect the human element and the people. So when you have somebody with that knowledge that can bridge that gap and can really be involved in the conversations of where the company is bleeding, how they're making their margin, do they have stable SOWs, understanding the product, all of these things that come into play, then you really can then bring it back to the people. Like you said, what happens is a lot of focus is, especially when a company is scaling, a lot of focus is directed to the new customers. You want that new shiny thing. You need to increase your numbers. You need to meet your numbers. And so you're really focused on the net new business for your organization. However, then you're neglecting and sort of cruising with the customers that exist. Very similar to employees, right? You put so much money and so much effort into recruiting and talent, and a good source of, I want to say about usually 30%, 40% is referrals, right? Comes from referrals. But if you have staff that is not as engaged, if you have staff that is just not feeling very valued and is doing the work simply as a job and doesn't see themselves as part of the organization or any sort of investment into the long-term game, then the referrals are going to slow down, and all of that is going to slow down. Performance is going to slow down, and that is going to bleed into your customer retention, is going to bleed into all of these things. And when it comes to retention and what that costs to an organization, it could be somewhere between 50 to 200 percent of the annual salary
Yeah.
for that specific person, really kind of given the role. And if that person is in a sales position or customer facing position, then you now have to think the customers are not necessarily with you because of your brand or your name. They're with that person that engages with them, that is dealing with them, right? That has gained that relationship. And so wherever they go, they will go too.
That's so true. And when we talk about retention marketing, and that's why it's so important talking about the staff. How do you retain your staff? Because and you keep them like you're saying, if a staff member is happy, then they will deliver a better communication from the company, a better service. So we just talk about having the right loyalty program, having that customer coming back to your product or business. How do you keep the staff engaged and having that extra step from your staff from an HR perspective? Is that coming from on the first interview? Do you guys should business owners put programs in place for their staff?
Yeah, so the stats are quite clear when it comes to even retention and how it's affected from the onboarding phase. So if you have a very strong onboarding phase, retention is increased by 82%, which is insane. If it's very poor, so if you onboard somebody and it's just kind of like, here's your stack, here's what you got to do, go on and do it, um, retention then declines by 50%. So right then and there, you can lose somebody and they can be very disengaged. And within the first 30, 60, 90 days, you're going to see like a sort of like roller coaster, and you're not going to get the best out of the person that you interviewed. So I can present you a really good candidate, a really good person that is very motivated. And if they don't get the right impression and they don't feel that they got what they were sold in the interview, they're going to be disengaged and you're not going to get the best value. So at that point, you've already lost the potential that that person can bring to your organization.
Just so our viewers and especially business owners have a better idea of how a good onboarding session comes in with when it comes to your staff. How would you describe that versus the regular onboarding? And just to finalize my question, we do have two clients, former clients, who actually were more, I guess, thinking about acquiring new clients, and they just forgot about their staff. They treat their staff very badly, and the end result was just like that, very badly. So how do you describe for business owners, because this is part of your services, the onboarding process of new employees and how to keep them engaged with that onboarding process?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, we start with an audit. We need to understand what's going on in your organization, what your policies are, what your expectations are, and all of these things, and make sure that they have a sort of a new hire buddy or mentor or somebody that they can go to. So as long as the process when it comes to collecting the information and all the compliance stuff, that's like a requirement that needs to be automated, right? Nobody really should be focused on doing that kind of stuff. And it's a very simple process. Once that stuff is taken care of, then you need to make sure that on the first day that person feels very welcome, that they feel hyped and valued. Like we hired you for a reason, and we can't wait to get you started and get you into projects. So that warm and fuzzy leadership needs to be involved. Team members need to be involved. Taking that person, spending that time for like a lunch or something like that. Really having it planned out, having a schedule for that individual, making sure that their emails are set up and all of these and all the little things when it comes to IT and like all of the assets that they're going to acquire and all the information that they need for the organization, their payroll, all these things that needs to be really transparent and handed to them on the first day, first week for of starting a company. If you have somebody start and they don't even have their email set up or things like that, and you have people kind of scrambling in the background, it already gives a very bad impression
Of the business. That
yeah.
makes sense. That's funny. You didn't mention money. So there are a lot of things besides money to encourage.
Absolutely.
And that's funny because you mentioned a couple of things, and we've been working with a couple of staff members, like I mentioned, the best clients and the best companies that we work with, or I guess I should say the best results that we've seen is with companies with a good staff and engaged staff that are working hand to hand with the marketing team. Just to touch on that part, because we're talking about two things on retention. We're talking about how to retain your staff, keep them happy, and also how to retain your customers. What other insights can you share? Maybe Jason, we discussed a couple of things for the past few weeks with some team members and some staff members. How do you describe the personalization of this techniques when we talk about retention marketing?
Well, I think it kind of spins off of what Gabby was saying. It goes back to the emotions. When you get hired and when you're working in an organization, there's a sentiment whether you feel like you're working with your leadership or working for your leadership. And that is something that you can't fake that. So if you know that you're there, you're hired gun and you're working for, you feel it because you feel like you're just a number, your name. And even if you're getting paid a high salary, that will only keep you and retain you for so long because you'll feel like you're not valued in the way because it just shows in the action. So I think that's really what it comes down to is people nowadays to retain, the standards are higher for organizations too. They have to have better programs that retain, that develop, that give opportunities within. And it really comes down to an employee as a manager, they want to feel like they're working with their leadership, working with their CEO. And that requires more hands-on from the top down from what I've seen.
That's so powerful. Working with your company, not for your company. I've been there. I've been on both.
Yeah, and it's collaboration too, because we know the power of the mastermind. It's what we're doing right now, and it goes beyond just brainstorming. It's if I have a good idea, and then you have a good spin of that idea, then we become stronger, we become better, and that is that level of openness that is really powerful for organizations like Patagonia, like other organizations like Starbucks. They have this open collaboration because anybody's voice is there to be heard and they could contribute. And sometimes that is not the case for organizations. And you see it follow that people leave quickly when their voice is not heard.
Yeah. On marketing, we have reviews where we can go at, and it's a good signal where we actually read, all right, so we have to fix these things. And it gives us good ideas of how to fix things. On HR, however, sometimes you get reviews about employees too. That's something that we noticed on the reviews on Google reviews and stuff. But how do you? I guess you mentioned that you audit first your business, Gabriela. How do you get to that point where you know exactly where it is? Because on marketing, just retaining just 5% of more customers can drive up to 95% of sales. How does that translate to HR? How do you identify? All right, here's the problem that you're having.
So when you start, we can definitely do a lot with getting the data within the company and their turnover, their business workflows, and how they just function. What happens with a lot of organizations is that there's a lot of inefficiencies. And so you'll usually find, especially in a fast scaling company, you'll usually find people that are kind of cruising by and not doing much. And then you'll have other people that are overworking and then they're going to get burnt out very quickly. But then you have that, and then that starts animosity within the team members. And it's like, I'm doing all of this work and you're doing nothing, yet we're getting kind of paid the same. And then it starts even more friction and more things. So, I mean, there's so many different elements that come to it, and it's so important. You need to have a very defined compensation philosophy. A lot of organizations don't have a well-defined compensation philosophy, and that just means, how are you going to compensate your people? What ranges? What are the positions? How do you determine increments and bonuses and stock and whatever those incentives are going to be? It needs to be fair, right? There needs to be some structure, and yes, there could be some one-offs in other case scenarios, but there needs to be something that keeps it fair and equitable for all. Leadership is a big one. Leadership needs to be able to have and gain those relationships with their people. As Jason was saying, you need to be able to trust and have these conversations, understand that your voice is valued and it means the world, whether there's no such thing as dumb questions, right? But you need to really feel that in order to be honest and say, I'm having an issue in this situation. I need help. Right. If you feel that you don't have that opportunity to speak up in that way, because then your job might be in jeopardy or your skill set might be in question because you bring up certain issues and questions and concerns, then you don't have a very transparent culture. And at that point, you then start finding these people that before having those hard conversations of there's a concern or there I need help, they're just start to looking for jobs. They just start looking, applying, and the conversation you're having for the first time is just, here's my resignation notice.
Yeah, there's a disconnection between the leadership and the team sometimes. And so we can talk about this, all of us, about how do we see it. I talked to you, Gabriela, I think it was last summer, about a few of our clients that were having issues with their staff members. And I think you touched a good point about the disconnection between the leadership and building the right culture. So for marketing, we're always thinking about how do we bring that customer back? How do we keep them entertained? How do we share the right content so they keep coming back? And how do we share the right products inside the store? But for HR, sometimes, and we see this in and out, sometimes I don't see all the business owners having an internal program for their staff that help them keep that vision that they have and translate that vision to their staff so they can translate the same enthusiasm to their customers. How do you fix that disconnection, and how do you create the right culture inside an organization with regular people? Because we have a few of our clients, their regular staff members are just teenagers, 20 years old, and young people. How do you keep that, or how do you manage that?
So that needs to be that's an organization per organization situation, right? Because you need to understand your people, the kind of people that you hire, that you have, the age demographics, what their interests are. Surveys are great, but surveys are only good if you're able to take immediate action.
Yeah.
If you don't take immediate action, then you might as well not ask because people will stop sharing their opinion. They see nothing being done. There's a huge disconnect in a lot of organizations, I believe, with HR for various reasons. And I believe one of the biggest reasons is because HR typically has not spoken the business language in a very long time. They're talking about culture, they're talking about hiring, they're talking about payroll, benefits, things like that are very operational, but they're not really talking revenue. They're not talking margins. They're not talking about what the risks are and what the cost is of bleeding payroll, bleeding inefficiencies within the operations. And so when you have those kind of conversations, when you have that knowledge within HR, then I believe the rest of the C-suite finds value into their word and what they have to say into that and bring them into the boardroom. When HR is not in that boardroom, it feels sometimes, and I've been in that position in my younger years, where you're fighting for your people, but you really have no power. And at the end of the day, then you have the C-suite telling you this is what we're going to do after the fact. And even if you have an opinion, this is not going to work for our people. They're going to be unhappy. It is what it is. Your voice doesn't matter, right? So you kind of fighting that battle, and it happens a lot when HR is not in that seat and vouching for and being that voice of the people. So that's what really drives a lot of the culture fit. But it needs to be, if we look at surveys that have been launched for companies, a lot of people, yes, the money matters, right? They need to be paid fair, given the market. But a lot of it is value. They want to feel valued. They want to hear, and we keep saying the same thing. Their voices heard. that their opinion matters, that they have input into the organization, some sort of investment. So they want to feel that, again, as to Jason's point, I'm working with the organization. This is they're investing in me. I'm investing back in them in some way, and make it fun. It needs to be fun. It needs to be relationship driven. I mean, you're spending most of your day with these people from
Yep.
9 to 6, more so than our family sometimes. So you kind of really do need to like and have fun with the people that you're working with.
Yeah.
I think it's for me, like what I'm thinking about this is that, HR has been put in a box for a long time to be a legal compliance function, which is not fun for anybody, but it is necessary. But it's much more than that. And I think that's what's coming. That's what people need now. They need HR to be more tied to business goals than be in a corner just as a legal function that comes in when there's a problem. And I think that's the trick, is how, and even fractional services like you offer are important because you can step in and audit, but also execute on a different level than having to hire a whole team. And it's kind of one of those things like, how do you tie real business objectives? How do you reach them with HR? Is it a matter of talent? Is it a matter of development? Is it a matter of retention? It's a function outside of just the normal compliance, the payroll, and it goes deeper. And I think that's something that we can explore more. That the good companies that are doing that, they are leaning on the shoulders of HR more from the beginning, middle, and end.
No, you're on the fence, Jason. When you're training or you're managing sales teams or marketing teams, you see the reaction from different companies. What will be your frustration and how to fix that from a business owner perspective? Because sometimes they don't hear that. They just send you the staff, hey, work with them, and that's it.
I think it's a good point, because when you hire somebody, a lot of times there's an expectation that they can do their job well, which they should be able to do that well. But if there's a need for training, the leadership should have the resources to train their team to receive a higher function. And that is an HR, that's a skill development. And a lot of the time that is missing. You hire somebody, they have a set of skills, but they just got to your organization and they need to be trained and groomed in a proper way. And a lot of that time it's missing. And that function of AR, that's where they can come in and really develop their people. And it's good to retain, because it is, you retain them on your unique processes. Or you train them on those processes. That keeps them there because they have skills that they can only use in that position. So it's good for the leadership to invest in that type of training because it makes them valuable within the organization more than elsewhere.
Yeah,
and think about it. How much are you spending, and what are the resources that you're putting into training your staff, whether they're junior or mid-level, right? You're spending so much time and money to be able to get them to do their job well. If there's nowhere for them to go, because especially if you're hiring younger folks, right, Gen Z and all, they're not going to want to do that forever. That's just for the moment. And so do they see themselves doing something else within your organization? Have you opened those opportunities, and do you make it that flexible and collaborative to join other areas and do other things so that they can continue to grow and be invested in your organization, as opposed to having to then bring somebody else new and retrain and reinvest and start all over again?
And now that you mentioned that, how that follow-up looks like, and I'll tell you this: we have a couple of clients with virtual trainings for their team, but it's just too cold. It's just some videos on the website. Hey, just go ahead, watch it. Do you advise or do you encourage business owners to create their own program to follow up with their staff on these matters?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just hitting a check mark. That's just for compliance reasons or for whatnot. It's like, did this person complete this training? Yes, check, good, done. It doesn't really mean that the person really absorbed whatever was taught to them or will put it in practice. It just means that they just checked something off their to-do list and move on. So follow-ups and having lunch and learns and training sessions and workshops, these engaging things, have the groups together and speaking, trading ideas, you're always going to gain more value from that.
Yeah, a lot of the trainings that I've seen, and it's such a great point too. A lot of the companies, they invest in training, that is there to train their staff to decrease liability, reduce risk. And really the call to arms today is that the training has to go beyond that. It has to go to develop the individual employees, but it has to be based around their goals as well. And that's the huge part that people are missing. They base it around these legal requirements that nobody truly cares about, but they are necessary to maintain operations. We get that. But when you bring in the person and you care and then you train them, but also give them a voice with their personal and professional goals, that is a lot more powerful than checking a box.
Yep. That's a good point. And we can apply that to customers and also the staff, personalizing everything. That's what we've been doing on retention marketing. Any email that goes out has your name and everything is more personalized, works much better. It feels like you're part of that family. I'm guessing that is the same way with the staff. I'm sharing your website. Can you just let us know a little bit more about your services, Gabriela? We do have a couple of clients that would be interested of hiring a fractional HR just to follow up with their team or create a program.
Yeah. So we're beyond HR. So we're all-in-one customized partner for business solutions. So we bring all of the background when it comes to HR compliance, labor law compliance, corporate compliance, and knowledge and business advisory to staffing people. So we staff people within the US or worldwide. So we're able to really outsource a lot of functions, making it very efficient for smaller businesses and obviously enterprise. And we really meet businesses wherever they are in the phase that they have. So we can provide them, we focus on 3 pillars. So whether it be people, coaching, staffing, compliance, labor laws, making sure their agreements are bulletproof, making sure their corporate structure is set up right, whether it be S Corp, C Corp, LLCs, mergers and acquisitions. We have the legal staff to support those changes, and restructuring, a lot of operational workflow efficiencies. And then the third pillar is generating leads. So we do a lot of fueling their sales team so that they're able to scale. So our purpose is scaling in a sustainable way.
That's great. We've been looking.
I think a question too that I, as a business owner, so they have an HR agency that they're employees. So how does it work with you guys? Or they might be like, well, you're not employees, so are we at risk if we use you that in ways that we wouldn't be if we had an HR team as an employee set?
If they hire people through us, you mean?
Right. Yeah. So like if they hire you for fractional services for HR and they're using you for legal compliance. Yeah. And they're using you for legal compliance. Are they at more risk since your team are not employees?
No, absolutely not. It's just as if you were to hire and have a corporate attorney on your staff, right? It's just that it's going to cost you more, and we have legal staff that works with us. So most of the time with organizations, they'll have their HR directors, HR managers, and leaders. But what has typically happened within the HR sphere is that people become very specialized in specific units. So whether it be really specific and generalized in talent acquisition, or benefits or things like that, and you kind of just keep climbing the ranks within the organization. So they may not be as knowledgeable when it comes to labor law, right, or changes in that way, or corporate structuring and stocks and investments. And what if the owner wants to then sell the organization at some point? What is going to happen to that right, and that sort of structure? They may not have the best knowledge or connections and partnerships when it comes to vendor management or different HR systems. And so with us, they get a lot of discount, they get that advisory, they get that guidance to whatever they may need. So we do work with a lot of HR people and partner with them, giving them a lot of the insights and then making sure that their business is protected.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this discussion. I think is very useful for us and also for our viewers. And if you guys need anything from Gabriela, you can find her at hrbpinc.com. I'll leave the link on the description. So if anyone needs to reach out to you, they can just reach out to you through your website. Thank you guys, and talk to you soon.